Welcome, everyone. This is our seventh online forum, Matricalis online forum. I'm Olivia, and I'm here with co-hosts Allison and Zasha, and Elise is going to join us in a little bit. And we have three amazing, wonderful guests with us today, and I'm super, super excited to have Marti Epstein with us, Eunbi Kim, and Sarah Nemtsov. And yes, we're so excited. This is the last forum of the year. We've had several of these talks with guests and without guests, and it's been really, really helpful to have conversations about motherhood and musicianship and career and everything that comes with that, experiences, sharing experiences, positive, negative. And today I'd like to maybe even focus a little bit on little things that we can contribute to see what we can improve and things that we could do to improve our future generation that maybe might be considering and becoming mothers and having an active career and having doubts and all of that comes with that. So we're going to start off with little introductions. So I'm going to hand it off to Sarah Nemtsov first, who I think is joining us from Berlin today. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about yourself and your career and juggling motherhood with being a busy musician and composer. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's a great forum and a great work you're doing, and I think it's very important. I'm a composer living in Berlin. I have 3 children now, 2 bigger ones who are almost 14 and 12, boy and girl, and then a small one now who's now 11 months old. And well, I've been all my life freelancing, working a lot, writing a lot of music so far, and now that's quite new, quite recent. I have my first position ever in Salzburg at the Mozarteum. I'm a professor for composition now, and so this is now a whole new thing I have to deal with, how to cope with it. I have to say on the one hand, I've always felt a little bit privileged as a composer, seeing you instrumentalists or performers on stage, because I always felt I'm better off because I'm more flexible being on my desk, and then in rehearsals I don't have to be on stage, so I can take a child with me, sit with him or her or both, and can leave also, if necessary, if there's some catastrophe, you never know. It's not the musicians don't need me actually, but of course still it's some issues. I feel now it's also interesting because my first 2 children, they were really close, and I took them a lot. My husband is a musician too, and he was, especially when they were really small, he was doing a lot of traveling. He was really very often not at home. So I've been with them a lot, and also I took them because I wasn't on stage for trips. And at that time, my mother was still alive, but she was not able to. I mean, she spent a lot of time with them, but she had bad eyesight, so she couldn't really watch them. So, and my husband's parents were also not alive anymore. So we had no big family to take them. So when I was on trips, I looked for finding babysitter there sometimes, or just took them to concerts because of the privileged situation that I was not on stage. And now I'm kind of doing the same again, but I feel the difference, and for 2 reasons. On the one hand, I feel like ensembles are a bit more open now, because like 10 years ago when I brought my 2 kids, it was like always like, what, children, what are these alien creatures here? Kind of, I mean, sometimes also positive, but sometimes also negative. I had both experience, but however, it was always a kind of surprise. And now I feel it's a little bit more normal. It happens probably, it's just more to be seen, which I think is great to have children also in rehearsals or in concerts and so on. On the other hand, I feel people are a bit more welcoming because I'm now in a different position in my career. So I have even more privilege now. And this is sometimes, of course, it's comfortable, but I always feel a little bit annoyed by it because I think, well, now it's not a problem then, but when I needed it even more, that it wasn't a problem and that you know, would look for a babysitter because I was 10 years ago, I was in a different point in my career. It was more of a problem. Why? Why now only because I'm more established or whatever? I feel that's just not fair. Also, if I then see younger mothers or fathers also, or whatever, just parents. So that's something, I don't know, would be curious to hear your thoughts about it. I feel there's some inequality also, like whom to help and whom maybe just to, well, look for a babysitter. We don't know anyone or whatever. So yeah, that's some experience I made. And then also something I see now being in Salzburg for the first time in such a position, that in the academic field, which is really new for me, it's only a few months, there it's even more rare, I feel. And it's even more with all these Sitzungen, I don't know the English word, like meetings and things you have, also like the administrative. One thing is, of course, the lessons you have. And then if a baby sitter gets sick, I take him with me, the little one. The old ones are old enough now. So I'm still living in Berlin, but because of the old kids, I just cannot, you know, this is also something you just cannot move immediately if you have kids. You just cannot take your, maybe one is also a bit special and cannot change so quickly if it's not the you know, normal children also, but everyone. I mean, you just cannot put a plant somewhere else immediately. And this is something that is often required. But I felt they were really open at Mozarteum. I did some other applications before, and that's another topic also. I very well remember, I won't name the place and the commission, but I've had an application and the commission was almost all men. And after my presentation, I think only the women's, how do you say, Frauenbeauftragte, how do you say in English? The one who was watching for equality women or something. She that was the only female in the commission. And the first question after my presentation was, I had only two children at that time, like how would I imagine to deal with all this with the kids and the place? And I just thought, well, would this be, I did really an artistic presentation and teaching and everything. And if I was a male, if I was a man, would this be the first question? And that's something, you know, also the men should be questioned. If equality, either they should say nothing, or also a man with that in that age and with probably one or two children or prospective children should get this question: how would he do this or imagine to do this? So that that's something, yeah, I've seen sometimes.
Wow. I love the I think you've posed two really important and interesting questions. The first one being how, like, now that you're more established, you feel like you being a mother and having children is more accepted or maybe less questioned by others. And I think that's really interesting because honestly, I haven't exactly thought of that, but um, that is a very real thing. I feel, because I'm looking back. So for me, when I became a mother, I was also like starting my career. So it all kind of happened, and it's still it's all continuing to happen like simultaneously. And one of the things that was so striking to me when when I was pregnant with my son was the number of people who asked me, "So are you still going to do music?
Mm.
have your plans changed? Like, what now? And I don't know if I was just like young and naive or what, but I was shocked by this question. I was like, why would you even ask me that? Like, nothing, yes, and of course my life is going to change tremendously, but I don't see myself really doing anything else, career wise anyway. I mean, it might look a little different, but there were so many of those questions, in the beginning, and like, and I don't know, but I wonder how many opportunities weren't presented to me because I had a young child. Um, but now that I've been doing this for a while, and for long, and my kids are older, I don't get that kind of criticism at all anymore. Now it's more like, how do you do it?
Yeah,
Kind of thing,
which
which
is also
feels,
sometimes annoying.
yes, yeah. I think it's presented in a way that is meant to be flattering, or like, oh wow, I'm so like inspired by how you're able to like manage these things and this, that, and the other. So I'm not insulted for, necessarily, but it is interesting that, that wasn't a question, or a variation of that wasn't presented earlier. Like, okay, so how do you plan on doing all of these things? Or like, wow, good for you. You're gonna, that kind of encouragement. It was more like, oh, now you have to change your whole life. And it's interesting. I don't know. So now, not getting those kinds of questions and more getting like praise, it's a very different situation. And it is unfortunate that we can't come out from the beginning, like, generally speaking, like more supportive and more like, um, having admiration, really, you know, for a woman or a person who decides to, take that dive, and also, stay ambitious and stay career oriented. I don't know. I think that's really, I'm going to be thinking about this like all day now, and like seeing it everywhere I go, like forever. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? I think it's really,
Yeah, I think that's
Oh,
a really good point that you brought up, Sarah. Also, I think it ties in some ways, maybe for someone who is thinking about starting a family, right? Like if you're a freelance musician and you're like, oh, I need to wait and see if I can get a job first and then I'll start a family, and because of that insecurity and thinking like, oh, things will be different. But I think that also makes um, yeah, I think just the timing. I've talked to a lot of friends recently about timing of like wanting to start a family and then feeling insecure about not knowing because I have this like freelance career, and yeah, so that's maybe another thing to kind of like think about. I don't know, Dasha, were you thinking about saying something?
could I jump in?
Yes, please,
Yeah.
please.
I guess I'll introduce myself first. I'm Marti Epstein, and I'm a composer. And I think my experience might be a little bit different from everyone else here because I didn't have my son until I was 42. And part of it is exactly what you're talking about, Olivia. I'm a professor at Berklee College of Music, and I never thought that I wanted to have a kid, and I never thought that a child would fit into my career as a professor and my career as a composer. And then literally the day I turned 40, I had this massive panic attack and thought, oh my God, but I actually want a kid. And it's too late. It turns out it wasn't too late. I'm very fortunate, but I was traditional in that I wanted to get married before I had a kid. So I got married to my boyfriend at the time and had my son. My son is now 20. And I can talk about all the things that happen in between where your kids are and where my kid is. One of the wonderful and extremely sad things is that they leave home. It's great that they're independent and they're off on their own, but it's also kind of sad. Anyway, so I'll talk briefly about some of the things we've been talking about. One is that, so I was 42 when I got pregnant. I'd been at Berklee for 10 or 11 years. And Sarah, the same kinds of questions, or I think Allison, questions that you got, people asked me, oh, so are you going to come back to teach after your parental leave? And I thought, well, why wouldn't I? Also, by the way, this was in 2002. I was the very first woman at Berklee College of Music to take our maternity leave. So that's another story. And so another thing I want to pop in here is that I got divorced when my son was 8. So from the time he was 8, I was a single mom, and that had a whole other set of challenges, which is, when he was sick, and he always managed to only get sick when he was with me and not when he was with his dad. I had to decide, do I stay home with him and cancel my classes, or do I call a friend who I know doesn't have a regular 9-to-5 job, or what do I do? And his dad, well, this is another topic, but his dad didn't want to help out in those situations. So that was probably my biggest stress when he was in elementary school. And then the other thing I'll say, Sarah, like you, I used to take him to concerts. He's been to more student composer concerts than probably any child. He's also a hockey player, so I missed a lot of my own performances, taking him to hockey games and being at the hockey games when he was little. When he was older, he could do it himself. And then the last thing I'll say is that I think I didn't experience, as a composer, overt discrimination, but if you look at my works list, you see that I composed much less than I normally do between 2002 when he was born and 2010. And I think that people just stopped considering me. It's not that they were saying, oh, let's not ask Marti, she has a child. It's just that, and this is something I would like to hear from all of you about, when you're a mom, sometimes you become in the background of people's radar. They stop considering us. At least that's been my experience. And then when he went to middle school, I had to really fight and self-promote and do all the things that I had to do when I was 30. And here I was, almost 50, having to do it all over again. Thankfully, I have a lot of performers in Boston and other places who are supporters of my music, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. But still, why did I have to do that? I think I'll stop. Stop there for now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Marti. Let's talk more about that, but we still have one other guest that I would love to hear from as well. Eunbi, Kim.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eunbi. I'm a pianist. I'm based in New York City. I'm also co-founder of Bespoken. It's a mentorship program for women and non-binary musicians. I am a brand new mom. My daughter Rumi is almost 4 months, and it's so interesting to hear everybody's experiences so far on this talk. Because I'm still figuring out a lot of things. I took a break. So I performed and worked like all throughout my pregnancy. It was great. It's not what I expected. I actually tell people that I think even more creative and more productive in my creative output during my pregnancy. And I was, really, really happy. And then I had decided ahead of time that I would like to take some time off. I did not set a real timeline for how much time I was going to take off, except that I knew that I would start performing again in January. I don't know why, and maybe this is an experience that could relate to, that other people could relate to, but I just had no idea before I had Rumi how difficult it was going to be a mom. It's like nobody told me, and I felt like there was a vast conspiracy out there where people withheld information from me, because I had this fantasy of I would wake up at this time and then feed my daughter some breakfast and play with her, and then I'll practice a few hours, and then we'll get together again. And that's not at all. That's not even close to what I experienced. You know, I think I cried every day the first 3 weeks because it was so difficult. It was so hard. The birth alone was so difficult. So that was a big kind of mind shift. And then after that, I started getting like really depressed about my career. I was like, oh, do I even, you know, can I have a career? I can't find time to practice. I can't, you know, I think the first 3 months I didn't practice at all. And I was like, oh, how am I going to find time to practice? So right now I'm sort of navigating childcare. I'm very fortunate because I do have an artist residency next month at Baryshnikov Art Center, which is here in New York City. And from the time that I approached them and then they accepted my proposal was when I got pregnant last year. And I was so paranoid because I had heard a lot of stories about like discrimination and all this stuff. Um, but they were extremely accommodating. Actually, I was just so paranoid that I remember they announced all the winners of the artist residency, and I wasn't on there after they had told me that I got it. So I wrote to them saying, "What's going on?" And I thought for sure it was because I had told them in the previous email that I was pregnant. They said, "No, we felt like because of your pregnancy, you're not going to want to perform in the fall, and you probably want more time. So we're putting you on a different program." I said, "Oh, okay." Great, 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 great. And then I had a production meeting with them and I wanted to ask them, I felt kind of shy asking them, you know, is there a space where I can pump or nurse? And they were like, yes, yes, we have a room here and you just, you know, tell us ahead of time what, you know, because there are other people using it in the building. So we'll show it to you. And it was a very nice room. And I thought, huh, okay. So they've just kind of like been extremely accommodating, extremely helpful, and great. And now I'm really excited about going back to working and performing next month and doing the artist residency and start touring again. But I think for a long time I had like very mixed feelings about this. So I can stop there.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. It's really great to hear that some places are changing and being accommodating and actually coming forward. This is really very positive news. To hear that someone is, you know, being really considering and making sure that you're comfortable with everything. I feel like we've all probably had more negative experiences in the past, but it's important to have this. I'm sorry, are you hearing a trumpet in the background? Sorry, there's people warming up here. I hope it's not.
There's some brass long tones happening.
I hope it's not too loud. Let me know. The other thing I just wanted to mention, you were saying like just the crazy panic like after your child was born, and I definitely related to that at the very beginning. I just like just feeling super overwhelmed and being like, but I have to practice, I have to do this thing, and I have to do this, and I have to prepare for the next thing, and now I have this baby and I don't know what to do, and everything is bad and I can't figure it out, and I'm a bad mom and all this stuff, and like your head is just spinning and it's just crazy. So that was, I mean, I think a lot of us related to that. But then I think one thing, like I was talking to a friend and she was like, Olivia, just take it one step at a time. Like set little goals each day, you know, and that really helped me. I mean, just even just the smallest goals, and then really like go up from there. And that has been like, that was a really huge change for me. Just really not trying to do everything at the same time, because I think that's what we want to do. You know, just we're also we're on that mode also, like as freelancers, and then we're like, okay, I can do it all. Yeah, it's fine. I can do more and I can do it all. But then just like trying to take a step back and just, you know, enjoying the time with your baby and just making little steps. So anyways, just
For sure. Yeah, I think in timing wise, taking these 3 months off and not doing any performing and just cocooning with my daughter, I feel so privileged to be able to have done that, and I have no regrets. And same thing, I was panicking a lot, and one of my mom friends just said the best advice that she had gotten was that expect to do nothing. Expect to get nothing done except, you know, maybe holding your baby. If you hold your baby and she's fed, then that's a really great day. But just like lower your expectations, and then this time will pass. And I'll also mention, because Sarah and Marty had mentioned in terms of timing, um, I sort of just had my daughter sort of, I guess, later. I don't know, like what by what standards, I guess, but at 36, having my first baby, and I think that wasn't like a totally well, I don't know what I have trouble remembering things before my daughter was born, but I remember just not being very interested in having a family. It just didn't interest me that much. I was like very, very focused on my career. Um, I love being like the fun aunt, but I didn't like have my own interest in having a family, and until I met my husband, and then that was like already in my 30s, and so that just sort of happened kind of organically.
If I could comment on what you just said about cocooning with your daughter at the beginning, um, looking back when my son was, between the time he was born and when I went back to teaching, so he was about 5 months old when I went back to teaching. He timed his birth very well. It was in August. And in a way, even though I wasn't really practicing or composing that much during those first 5 months, I look back at that time as one of the only times in my life that I had no anxiety and was very calm, because all I was doing was really sitting on the couch and nursing him all day, or changing his diaper or whatever, and playing with him, but it was like I wasn't worried about my career. I wasn't worried about anything. My job was to take care of this tiny little adorable thing. It wasn't until I went back to work that the anxiety about my career and all this stuff started to come back. I think in a good way, because I wanted to get it going again. But I remember those days very, very fondly, I have to say.
Definitely. Me too. And I think like similarly, getting back like into it, back into working and trying to figure out the new normal and the new routine. Something that I struggled with was not managing my expectations, right? So thinking that I could do all these things all the time at like a very high level every day. And like, it took me a long time actually to realize that that is, for me anyway, not possible. And that it's okay, you know? So like similarly, like what Olivia was saying about, just setting like these goals that are like achievable, and reasonable. And even if they're small, like celebrating the achievement of those small goals, and forgiving, for me anyway, I like learning how to forgive myself if, one day I wrote like a lot, oh my gosh, like just flowing with music, but like I only spoke with my daughter for like 20 minutes, or conversely, I had a great family day yesterday. I didn't do any work, and like it's okay. But I still kind of struggle with that too. I still feel a little guilty, like, oh, maybe I could have done a little bit of that yesterday also. So it's still a work in progress, but I have, it has helped things a lot for me to just be like, you know what, it's okay that everything is not amazing all the time, or that I'm not able to, execute all the things that, simultaneously. It's totally fine actually, and everything's going to be okay, right? But it's hard, I think especially like for musicians too, because I think we tend to be exceptionally like critical of ourselves and hard on ourselves and push ourselves, and it's just a personality that we tend to all have. So it can be tough when you're like, gosh, I want to do all these things and I want to do them all so well, but I don't know if I can do them all so well always, but it's all right, it's okay.